Okay, so digital agencies embrace the local platform. What we're going to do, we're going to have 3 speakers, each of which is going to give a little bit of a brand case study. Jed will get into that a little more, but we're going to start out with a little bit of setup. Is this the right one?
You can use both.
Okay, here we go. That's Jed's doppelganger up there, Don Draper.
What do you want?
So what are we talking about? Why are we talking about digital agencies? It's a topic that comes up at a lot of our events, a lot of events that we attend out in the world. And there's some fundamental things going on out there that have sort of driven sort of the emergence of digital agencies. In particular, if you look at sort of the newspaper space and to some degree in YP, we're seeing digital agencies emerge as channels to attack certain segments of the market, et cetera. We're seeing sort of the CMR business sort of transition into sort of the digital agency business in a lot of ways. So we're seeing a lot of energy shifting in this direction. And basically it's because of, some fundamental trends, the shift in ad dollars, legacy to digital, which we all know about. I think the more interesting one is sort of the shift in dollars from advertising to services, which is, we'll have a little bit of the data and a little discussion on that as well. And that's sort of, from pure advertising sales to more platform-based solutions, sort of the integration of all these things into sort of a solution set is a big piece of what is going on with the whole digital agency model. So there's some fundamental shifts that are going on, and then there's some fundamental reasons, I guess, which are sort of related to these shifts, why agencies are forming or why media companies are building digital agencies or acquiring them. Again, it's a way to capture that shifting revenue. There's a huge demand for digital expertise, sort of, up the food chain among higher spending and more sophisticated advertisers. How do you attack that market? You have to have a certain level of expertise that you have to offer. Obviously, it's a retention play for in a lot of ways. It's a way to get to a higher spend level with a lot of accounts, and it's just part of a segmentation approach for many companies. So there's lots of underlying drivers of sort of this emergence of digital agencies. And we have one piece of data that we're going to share, and I'll let Jed share a little bit about that.
It wouldn't be an authentic BIA Kelsey presentation if we didn't throw a little data at you. So here's some stuff from our LCM survey. What we're looking at here is franchises versus all SMBs. The reason is I think it goes back to a point that Charlie was making a minute ago about why digital agency and what are we learning from these digital agency units that are forming. And one of them is I think sort of more granular and specific forms of customer segmentation, and why you want to create customer segmentation that is more specific. And of course, one of the ways that we're talking about here is looking at multi-location and franchise versus other segments of your business, right? So here we're focusing on franchise because of this event and because the 3 presenters we're going to bring up each have franchise or brand multi-location case studies and successes that they're going to talk about. The bottom line here is if you look at the franchise space versus all SMBs that we're talking to and surveying, these franchises are really prioritizing digital initiatives across the board. And to Charlie's point, some of those are paid media and advertising, and some of those are non-advertising. They're marketing, they're business services, that whole sort of nebulous other area that might represent upwards of 50% or more of out-of-pocket spend, but isn't necessarily traditional paid advertising. So whether that's SEM on the paid side, SEO more on the sort of marketing services side, something like analytics and CRM and quote-unquote big data, which may be much more of a services play, and then things like mobile and social. The big idea is blue represents franchise, purple represents everything else, and these franchise and multi-location players are very energetic, very proactive about increasing their digital capacity, spend, usage, etc. So it's a very attractive audience and a very attractive segment to start with and focus on when you're talking about a digital agency unit. So there's a little background. What we want to do, maybe I'll back that up, is bring 3 different people up to the stage, and what we're going to do is have each of them give about an 8-minute case study on a brand that they've worked with, a multi-location enterprise, and have them share what they worked on from an agency perspective, what the success was, and then open it up to some Q&A with those 3. So gentlemen, please come to the forefront. And let me quickly introduce each of them. We have Chris Pinkerton, the sales director for US and Western Canada of Mediative, Chris Malone, the VP of Sales Strategy for Marquette Group, and Victor Wong, the CEO of PaperG. And we'll go in that order. So Chris Pinkerton, I'm going to hand you a remote, and you're going to give us a few minutes on a case that you guys did with Avis and Budget.
Great.
We'll get the right one up here in a second.
I see Marquette is fired up first. Do you want to?
Or do we want to switch a room here?
Let's see if they can switch that out real quick.
Give me that.
So I'll do the interlude while it's coming. So what I'm going to speak about today is the Avis and Budget Group in North America. Avis and Budget reached out to our company to help them do an assessment of the marketplace. And it's not really a shift to digital. We would all assume that Avis and Budget is a digitally savvy company. We can all kind of, I think, appreciate how much demand they get digitally and how much they convert digitally in the rental business. But they reached out to us because of the shift to performance and looking at the channels that they can drive that are going to inherently create more booked revenue for them. And so what we did is looked at their business. I don't think I need to explain how big Avis and Budget is, but just so that you're aware, there's about 5,500 locations in North America. There's 10,000 globally. They're a Fortune 500 company that generates a lot of digital revenue. But what they came to us for was really to define what the digital opportunity was for that organization, and in much broader context. So we went through a process of understanding what the ceiling was. Step one there is really understanding where their potential customers are. There's a lot of demand in their marketplace, and it's not really about being seen, it's about being found. Similar to what YP was talking about earlier, that's a very critical piece. So we need to understand where the audience is today and where their audience is going to be 2, 3, and 5 years from now, and what access points they're going to be using digitally to consider the products and solutions that Avis and Budget Group has. So that's kind of step one, understand what the market opportunity is. Then we move on to step two and try to understand what the experience is. So when we can understand what channels people are coming in on and what experience they have, we can relate how well Avis and Budget Group does against direct competitors. But there's one other segment that we also look at when we do that, is we look at aspirational competitors. Because the digital consumer today develops habitual behavior when they're searching online. And so one of those behaviors is their experience on other sorts of web properties and portals that they're used to experiencing. So Amazon or Facebook or other platforms where the navigation experience, the conversion experience, the calls to action create habitual behaviors. So we want to understand their audience understanding, what they use, and how they relate that to the Avis Budget experience. And then we can set a benchmark baseline of where that company sits compared to their competitors, understand what the gap is in a bunch of different digital channels, from mobile to social to search, paid and organic, to display advertising and social as well. Once we can define what that gap is, then we can create a playbook or a roadmap to close that gap. So I'm going to show you some of the things that we're doing in a broader execution globally with Avis and Budget and how we're kind of slowly building this through. But one of the things about being found is a critical understanding for the business because we're shifting more towards performance, we need to understand what they can immediately do today that's going to drive increased booked revenue. So we did a quick analysis of two different types of buckets of search activity. One we call intent visibility. Intent visibility is someone that is specifically searching for car rental. That is somebody that's very low funnel in the purchase process, going to convert in a very short period of time, versus somebody that, what we call extended visibility, somebody that's searching for travel or kind of a lead indicating offer like booking a hotel that could potentially be an Avis and Budget customer. When we do that analysis and compare them against their competitors, we look at how visible they are. And one of the things we noticed in the intent category specifically, so people are actually looking to potentially book a rental car, we noticed there was a gap. That gap between them and a key competitor, Enterprise, was really in the geo-specific searches, so local search. And local search is inherently a higher converting channel because it's a shorter sales cycle, closer to purchase. And so that's one of the areas where we noticed where we could quickly improve the booked revenue. But one thing that we wanted to look at is not just from a search perspective, but this volume calculation that we have is from multiple different channels. So from social and from some other kind of conduits of demand that can come in digitally for this brand. One of the estimates we did is to look at all that demand and quantify it. So there's over 1 million additional monthly searches that are occurring that have a local intent that the Avis and Budget Group isn't being found for. So there's a massive opportunity there to convert that audience and engage that audience digitally. And as I mentioned, the in-market audience that's searching very low funnel has shorter sales cycle, higher converting, all those positive attributes to that. Has anyone seen a path like this before when you're walking down the street? It's called a desire path. And this is really what, to me, local search is all about. It's the I just want to get something done signal. in a lot of research we've done, when people are online, they want to find the fastest path to information. And in order to do that, you need to create that and enable that sort of activity online. And so local aligns naturally to audience intent. You can drive people to a conversion a lot quicker. So local is very important to the business. Looks like we're frozen.
No, okay. Is there a wrap-up we can do?
There is a wrap-up, so I'll cut to the chase, I guess. So
sorry for the
one of the things that we did in this analysis is we wanted to improve their visibility at a local level, not just from a search perspective, but from a social perspective. So the key strategy, or the kind of tagline to this, is really about trying to take their brick and mortar locations and emulate that in a digital way. So part of the strategy is to take all their single locations, build their social locations from Facebook Places, from Google+, Instagram, Foursquare, as well as a better online visibility, so that we can take their footprint that is physical and make it digital. Some of the things that we consider with that, which are, I think, very important in building a strategy for local, is the percentage of that traffic that comes through mobile. And mobile is not just about the device, it's about the mobility or the consumer that's on the go. So when we're looking at that, we also want to consider the single session that they're in. There's a high propensity for people that are using mobile devices to be coming in and out of a social experience. And so one of the things with an extremely large brand that we want to consider is how can we get people out of the open marketplace? And to us, the open marketplace is somebody that's just naturally searching for a car rental and can consider any brand in a Google or a Bing search. When you're able to create visibility at a social level, you can use people's peer group and their social sphere to pull people out of that general marketplace and potentially engage somebody through a social channel versus doing an open search where they're comparing prices and product and services. So that's one of the key things that we're looking at. Is that fired back up?
Let's try it again.
I'll cut to the chase.
Right, okay.
So one of the things that I wanted to kind of explain just to the room is the importance of local search in the evolution of the search landscape. So we traditionally had all of our on-places content. So our main domains, our local pages, the optimization of that, driving advertising to it. And then we have the social side. And one of the key things about looking at where local is going in the future is the kind of pivoting of the large businesses that have a big audience. So Facebook has a large social audience. They're pivoting their business to become a local search experience with Facebook Graph. Google has a large search audience. They're pivoting their business to create a social experience. Now, one of the things that's important with any of these providers on the social space is they need content or inventory to pull when they're shifting their business that way. So as a large brand, if you can create that content for those engines to pull, you're going to create visibility for yourself. And the more accurate that visibility is, and the more rich that content is, the higher you're going to rank and the more demand of traffic you're going to create. So it allows you to almost competitively leapfrog your competitive set that is not engaging at a local social level, which is very important for a big brand like this. One of the things that we did from a social level, just to give an essence of the activity that's occurring, is we did a brand audit. And so this is not looking at the brand avis.com or budget.com. It's looking at all of the Facebook Places pages, the Foursquare tips, the Instagram photos that are being posted by users that are not in control of the brand. And so you can see there's a massive amount of activity that's occurring in the marketplace at a social level that the brand is not enabling or gathering. And so when we can understand that there's a large amount of demand coming in at a social level that the brand isn't able to convert through or create brand integrity or create a brand message with, that's a big opportunity for the brand going forward. And that is taking kind of the physical footprint and making it a digital footprint and building out that social side of it. And so this is really, I guess, the summary that I'll leave with today is emulate the brick and mortar footprint digitally by building the social locations, by tying those to the core website so you can create a conduit of activity that's coming socially through to the core web experience, ensure accuracy of name, address, phone number, which I think everyone in this room is very aware how important that is, and then engage the audience at a local level. So it's really a progression, and that's the first step in facilitating the demand that's naturally out there. And then you can move into the second phase, which is about being seen and using paid media a little bit differently to funnel traffic through and convert that traffic. So I'll just leave it with that.
Right. Just very quick, did this whole process make conversions more efficient, cost efficient for these guys?
It does. We looked at the conversion rate on all channels when we analyzed this. And when we picked what channels have the biggest opportunity, we compared that with what channels have the highest conversion experience and mapped those against each other so that we could understand where the low-hanging fruit is. And local intent converts at a significantly higher rate than a national type search or a broad-based search.
Okay. Very good. Thanks, Chris. From one Chris to another, Chris Malone is next, VP of Sales Strategy from Marquette Group. And your client case study is Nationwide Insurance, right? That's right. All you.
Thank you. So good content so far. Thanks for BIA, Kelsey, for having me. 8 minutes for me, typically as a relatively verbose sales guy, is what I call an agenda. But I'm going to try to move through this as quickly as I can. One of the things that I think you'll see come together is many of the concepts that the thought leadership over the last 2 days have described actually come through execution here in the presentation and the case study that we have for Nationwide Insurance over the work we've done for them over the last 8 to 9 months. So essentially, starting to work with Nationwide Insurance, they had 3 key objectives that we needed to address for them. The first, obviously, as for most customers, they wanted to drive volumes of cost-effective leads. They are looking to aggressively grow their business and own share in the insurance space. To do that, as with most franchise or affiliate-based networks, there's a hesitancy to overcome in investing in digital programs, typically because either they've had a program that's been prescribed for them through their corporate parent that didn't work previously, or primarily the same issue that we all face, they don't understand the space. Obviously, you don't have to explain to a small business owner or a corporate decision maker that they need to be online, but how they need to be online and whether they've got the confidence in making the right investments to get online is a totally different story. So what we typically see is they either sit on the sidelines or they do very little to get involved, and they gravitate back to what they're most comfortable with traditional media. Lastly, one of the areas that I think is most important for us, something that Mark from Geo Locals talked about this morning, was the importance of partnerships. Because we're dealing with a corporation that already has an extremely aggressive online presence as they're looking to acquire customers. And as with most big brands, they've taken the leadership position in making sure that the brand is visible locally. Now we're dealing with a situation where, one, we've got a corporate SEM provider who is already entrenched. They're doing a good job, but they don't have the expertise necessarily, nor the scale to help the agents go back and get local. So the agents on their own, knowing that this is where they need to move into, are out beginning to run their own programs. They're conflicting with the corporate campaign. They're outside of compliance, and that's something that obviously needed to be dealt with. So the very first thing that we had to look at, really there are 3 key things that we needed to do to build the appropriate program for Nationwide. And the first really started with collaboration. So we worked with their search agency. We worked with their social media agency. We actually worked with the business units, or as they would describe them, the silos within their business, to make sure we could understand how do we drive synergies versus competition. The objective is not to drive the cost up at the expense of having more ads visible. We needed to drive incremental ads, not cannibalization. So we have the corporate campaign in place. We're now working on coming up with ways that not just at an agent level we can drive a competitive presence, but in highly congested markets where there are literally over 100 agents within an urban area, how do you make sure that those campaigns aren't competing against each other as well? The next piece we needed to look at, one of the slides that the gentleman started with in the session here is, there are 4 or 5 key areas that every franchisor or franchisee says they need to attack in 2014 to be successful. If you ask them why they need to be there and how it fits into their strategy, that's an extremely difficult question for them to be able to answer. So essentially, when you look at the 4 primary pillars of local search, local, social, search, and mobile, most of the time when they invest, typically the way a small business invests is based off of the last good sales pitch that they received. And so with, on average, 39 marketers coming in or salespeople coming in to sell marketing to them on a monthly basis, it's very difficult for them to make a decision. We're talking about a group of people that historically, up until the revolution in the digital space, had to make a decision about lead generation through print yellow pages, which was it's alphabetical and the big ads go on the front. Didn't take a whole lot of technical expertise to make that type of decision. Now we have an incredibly technical set of products that they need to be able to work their way through in making a decision. So we really had to come back with a way to simplify the online marketing space for them and create a set of products that work synergistically across a strategic continuum. So based off of exactly what they were trying to accomplish as an individual agent, we could prescribe a program for them that met their unique business need. The next thing that we focus on in the selling process is the selling used to be, even on a consultative basis, we're going to do a needs analysis and we're going to prescribe. In this marketplace, that's not enough. We need to complete a gap analysis, we need to educate, we need to prescribe, and then we need to educate and educate and educate. So the selling process is really a pre and a post-sale activity. And so at Marquette Group, that's something that we focused on significantly, a large part of the reason for our success so far, and a big reason that we're seeing the program grow as a byproduct. So the last piece of it is we really need to focus on the results that matter. So talking to an agent who wants to drive policies and new commissions about impressions and clicks and even calls is not relevant to them unless they can actually tie it back to the business result. So we've been able to do that. Thankfully, we have a client that does a fantastic job from an analytics perspective and really advanced in terms of attribution modeling. I'll talk real quickly about the results that we've seen. And essentially, we have over a third of the agents, because of the consultative process, that are now participating in the program. Over the last 6 months, we've got 1.5 million ad impressions. Desktop and mobile visits are up over 500,000 at this point. We've got 80,000 incremental phone calls that have been driven by the program. Secondary actions, typically that's either an email requesting a quote from the agent or that's a direct quote request online. We've seen 60,000 of them in addition to the 80,000 phone calls. The average agent is driving $19,000 in brand new policy revenue every single month. And the big piece of this, and where it really hits home for both corporate and the agent, is we've been able to do this with less than a 1% overlap in the programs overall. So we're creating newer opportunities that are not cannibalizing the corporate program. The beauty of this is if you look at the bottom line for the overall corporation, what they've seen in the same 6-month period that they attribute directly back to the program itself is a 150% increase in the amount of online quote requests being generated by the program, and the bind request on those quotes is higher than any other program that they have. So it's not just greater capacity and greater volume, it's actually higher quality because of us being able to get back local and deliver that back to a local outlet that can service them right away. So with that, I'll turn it back over.
Yeah, let me ask you one follow-up question.
Certainly.
So on the this is sort of a lot of what we were talking about yesterday. When you look at multi-location, you look at these network businesses. So when you're working with somebody like Nationwide, how much of the work, the education, the training, the implementation is at corporate level versus local level? And I guess the follow-up there is, how much unity at the local level was there around the types of leads that you're trying to convert here, because maybe all of these agents had a very similar set of objectives? Did that help you in this case to get unity?
In terms of similar set of objectives, they are very different.
Okay.
And so, what we found is that to have success in a corporate program that is franchise-based, you have to first meet the objective of the individual franchise, but in a way that actually supports the corporate brand. In terms of the education starts at corporate in terms of how do we identify the opportunity, work within the business units to help them understand exactly where it exists. But on a day-to-day basis where the rubber really hits the road, it's at the regional level, it's at the district level with their sales managers, and it's on a day-to-day level with the individual agents.
So you were doing education optimization at all of those levels, starting at grassroots local.
Correct.
Interesting. Great. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Last up, our buddy Victor Wong, the CEO of PaperG, and your case study is Cheese Boy. Go ahead.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm one of the founders of PaperG. I'm going to have a little different spin today. We're going to talk about a growing brand that we helped nurture, as well as display, which is a very different channel for a lot of the folks in this room. My company is very focused on making display accessible and easy for companies to use. You can see some of our customers up here. A lot of these are media companies that are acting like agencies. We work with agencies as well. And increasingly, we're seeing brands actually bring a lot of agency functions in-house, where marketers are demanding ad technology and marketing technology to do it themselves. And so we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the complexities involved, as well as how one particular client of ours was able to succeed. So just in terms of making sure everyone knows what we're talking about, we've been doing this for some time. We actually build more ads today than nearly any other software out there, with the exception probably right now of Adobe. And now with Flash going away, we're probably going to be seeing more volume through our system. So we have quite a bit of data on what works in the display channel as a demand generation platform. And I'm going to be sharing some of those insights as we go through. So in terms of just running a campaign in display, oftentimes people don't even know where to start because you have to collect assets, build different ad units, and then actually publish it, which is really challenging when you compare it to email marketing or search, where creative is not even a friction, because once you have a template in the email system, any marketer can go in there, blast it out, see the instant results. So with search, obviously, you just have to put in some text. Hopefully, with the right keyword targeting, you can see some results. But that's not always the case for every one of the brands out there, especially when you're trying to get attention. And so the brand that we're going to talk today is Cheese Boy, which some of you might have heard of if you're coming from the Northeast. Some of you may have not, and hopefully you will soon. But in terms of our product and what we've been able to do for our customers is dumb down the whole process of display advertising and making it really easy and accessible. So when I say we have 2,500 different active designers on our platform, that actually refers to sales reps, in-house marketers, campaign managers, really people who are not professional designers necessarily. But display can be accessible to them once you're able to use ad technology to do so. So Cheese Boy is a chain of about a little over a dozen grilled cheese sandwich stores that look a little bit like this. Some of you might have seen them in malls. They're generally at high traffic locations like train stations, malls. This is the sort of business that doesn't have necessarily a high average purchase order, which you might associate with display advertising, where typically you're hearing about case studies around auto, for example, where the consideration cycle is 3 weeks. The car might cost $15,000 or $30,000. And so display advertising in those cases make a lot of sense because it takes time to get exposure. People are very influenced by repeated exposure. But for something like a grilled cheese sandwich where you might go in and pay $3 for, it may not seem intuitive to you why they might turn to something like display advertising to drive demand. But if you're the search marketer, you might think, OK, how am I going to advertise this business? Who's looking for grilled cheese sandwiches at any given time? This is a snapshot of just using Google's keyword generator in the Boston area alone. So you can see it's pretty difficult to reach a sizable audience who isn't currently in the market looking immediately for grilled cheese sandwich options. So you have to start really thinking creatively about how you're going to reach a target audience and drive awareness to actually show up at a store that they've never heard of. Certainly with bigger national brands like an Avis or a Nationwide Insurance, people have some level of familiarity and they might be in market looking for those. But when you have no idea that something exists, how can you even search for it? So what we decided to do with them was enable a cross-device display campaign where they were going to be able to target ads to people both on their desktop but also on their mobile smartphones while they're on the go during particular daytimes where we know that they're more likely to show up. And we coupled it with a particular promotion where this particular outlet was offering a free grilled cheese on a particular day. So we actually knew, because this was the only digital campaign running, how many people we were actually driving to the stores. So one of the interesting findings that we had when we ran this campaign was that mobile significantly outperformed desktop from a pure performance standpoint. It was able to actually lift overall campaign performance by nearly 32%, but while decreasing the cost of the campaign because mobile inventory is so cheap. But that might lead you to think that, man, I should just put all my spend on mobile. Well, the other thing that we found from running this campaign was desktop was really necessary for driving the volume. At the end of the day, it was able to deliver more people in a geo radius than mobile was at a slightly higher cost, but at a far larger volume. So any campaign that you think it should be mobile first, you might be actually misled by some of the results, and you might be missing, in fact, what you should be doing, which is omni-channel or cross-device targeting or cross-platform, however you want to call it. Using creative optimization by being able to build multiple versions of the ad through a brand template, we were able to also find out some pretty cool findings around how to do creative for them. For example, placing the logo on the top left was able to drive performance much higher than if you moved it to the far right or the bottom right. Certainly including an offer always helps, particularly when it's free, but including a location, and this is a pretty common finding that a lot of different companies are finding, but by including the location in the ad, we're able to lift the CTR of the ad itself. Now, the actual results. So this was actually a pretty small bare-bone budget to drive some awareness and some foot traffic to the store. They only spent $2,500, which is not very large, but for a lot of SMBs or growing brands, it's actually a fairly sizable chunk to spend in actually only 2 weeks. So we ran a campaign for only 2 weeks. We were able to generate a pretty sizable amount of clicks, millions of impressions, but the thing that really mattered to this business, obviously, at the end of the day, was how many people showed up. We were able to track online RSVPs where people just set up a reminder to be told, hey, come to the store on this day and get a free grilled cheese sandwich. A lot of people signed up for that, in fact, thousands. But many more, of course, just showed up and said, give me my free grilled cheese sandwich. And what we found from this exercise with them is that display can be a very cost-effective driver of demand for local businesses. And in fact, we were able to model out, looking at the additional spend that people were spending when they showed up at the store, that this was actually an ROI positive campaign, not just for lifting the brand and bringing customers that never heard of this business before, but actually driving that day incremental sales, because when you showed up and you got a grilled cheese sandwich, you probably also wanted a soda, or you probably also wanted a soup. You weren't just going to eat one grilled cheese sandwich. And so with an average click of about 50 cents CPC and drinks being sold or soups being sold at a couple bucks, it was very easy for them to actually make the ROI from each customer that showed up. So I hope this kind of opened it up for you guys to think about display in a new way as not simply a channel for big purchase items or a long consideration cycle sort of businesses, but in fact, this really works for any sort of business. You just have to set up the proper testing and bring the technology to a level that's accessible by the marketers so they can do it themselves.
Okay, thanks, Victor. Okay, I really want a grilled cheese sandwich right now.
Grill them instead.
You mentioned, mobile had greater performance. Is that a function of the device? Is it a function of this particular brand? Do you think?
I think we've seen different results for different industries, so I do think that you can't extrapolate and look at mobile and say, oh my goodness, like this always performs better. Mm-hmm. When we were targeting with mobile, definitely you see spikes during certain times of the day. People want grilled cheese sandwich closer to lunch, probably not during breakfast.
I'm thinking 2 o'clock in the morning is a really good time.
It's like the four-square math.
Yeah, you definitely, we have to time it obviously with store openings. Yeah, right. But I think mobile definitely has been proven as a cost-effective leader for things where you're on the go and you can be making impulse decisions. Mm-hmm. We've seen some of good results also for auto categories and such also, if you're able to track the life cycle of the campaign. Mm-hmm. But mobile in itself, obviously there's big panache over it for the last few years, but it's not the solution in itself. You really have to think, does it actually logically make sense for this industry to be doing it?
Okay. All right. But by the way, everyone, we have a few more minutes for questions. I will monitor Twitter if you guys want to feed Twitter questions. The hashtag, I think, is right over here. It's NatLocalQ, if I recall. And also, old-fashioned hand-raising works, too. There should be a mic roaming around. Judge, you got?
Yeah, I'll start with the two Chris's here. So for you guys, where either you're building an agency unit that may be new to your business, or you're really shifting that much more to digital and cross-platform, Victor made an interesting point from the technology solution point of view. His view on brand and agency, where some of those capabilities, I want to go to you later about this, are being taken in-house by the brand. For you guys, as you quote-unquote build out these capabilities, how much of it are you doing yourself? How much are you doing through partners? How are you thinking through the right mix here of how you build out the business scalably, positive margins, fulfill against a number of clients, all these sort of base considerations you have to get right?
Yeah, I think for us, we saw that migration back in the paid search management days as well, is as a company starts to spend a significant amount of money in driving a significant ROI, the skill set also evolves as well internally, and so they bring that asset in-house. And in a sense, for us, there's a sense of a win that we've taken a company from not being very efficient to driving extreme efficiency, and they take that skill set in-house. But at the end of the day, that's just one channel. And so we try and build solutions that are what the consumer marketplace and the brands are trying to integrate together. And at the end of the day, there becomes an efficiency to take something in-house, but there also is a scale question. When you're dealing with thousands of locations across the board, and you're trying to manage something and control a lot of different variables like brand, as well as local engagement, there's a lot of learning that's required, that's evolving, that sometimes an agency can provide with a more broader perspective of what's going on than kind of the insular world of sometimes working inside the organization. And so there is long-term value there in most cases.
Okay. Chris?
Most of what we do is through partners.
Okay.
What we work to do is to put together an all-star cast of media providers that fulfill anything from awareness all the way through loyalty. And we talk a lot about the market transition. I don't think that this is a market transition. I think it's an evolution. Transition to me would connote that it is a destination, that at some point this digital thing is going to stop, and I don't ever see that happening.
And we can't have these conferences anymore.
Precisely, But that being said, I think it's a matter of, because of the way that the market moves so quickly, it's best to use the best in breed, and then as the agency supply the wisdom and the technology that empowers those media properties to work well for the individual clients.
Yeah. Let me quickly jump in and ask Victor the point about agency and how often you're seeing that. How commonplace is that now where the brand is displacing the agency, trying to take that capability in-house, and it maybe changes your relationship or in some ways disintermediates the agency there?
Yeah, I think the agencies play a very valuable role. For a lot of brands, they made the decision that they want to outsource a lot of the functionality. I think a lot of it actually comes down to how the enterprise behind the brand is set up. If the IT department controls the website, I guarantee you they're not doing much digitally, because to get the IT department to update the website, put marketing tags, doing any of that stuff is really difficult. But if the marketing team, for example, controls the website, all of a sudden you can start seeing them saying, hey, we should be experimenting with this, we should be doing that. And so I think you have to see how the organization is set up to figure out whether or not it makes sense for them to be working with an agency or not. I think you're seeing a lot of companies that have brought search first inside the brand itself. Those are the ones who tend to be leading the way because of bringing, I guess, capabilities in-house, because they probably started dabbling in advertising technology and saying, hey, we can do this. We just need the tools to do this. But at the same time, I think if you're not going to invest in bringing in the right people to manage that, it makes total sense to have an agency.
Does this make Paper-G an agency, though? In some ways?
No, I don't think so.
I've never thought of you that way until maybe I'm starting to think of you potentially that way right now.
I think every ad technology company balances whether or not to work with a client or not. We've actually been erring on the side working with the media companies predominantly, as well as agencies themselves. The brands are a really recent phenomenon, I think, where they've been in the last year asking ad tech companies, hey, can we bring this in-house? I mean, you just saw last week Amex announced that they wanted to bring actually all of their digital ad buying in-house, 100% programmatic, meaning they wanted to use an ad tech platform to buy their digital display. And this is $150 million in spend that they used to put through agencies. And so you're beginning to see some agencies.
Do you think they're smart to do that?
I think that they're certainly bold. I think it's an aspirational goal. I don't know if they're going to be able to get there. And it's a lot of money to spend for anyone. I think agencies certainly can focus on certain parts of the budget still. But I don't think every company is like Amex, and nor should they try to be. I think it's really whether or not you think that you have the right team and the right organizational setup to do it. And not everyone is.
Chris Malone, I wanted to tie back to David LeBeau's comments earlier about sort of how the model has changed and working with the national channel, and it's no longer an exclusive relationship. How has that been for you? I mean, what's that adjustment been like for a company like Marquette?
Well, I think that the model has changed primarily for those who never embraced the relationship to begin with. Our relationship with YP and most of our what I would consider traditional media partners is incredibly strong. The biggest difference for a company like YP versus some of the other people that I would put into that category is we have a much stronger relationship with them because of their innovation within the space. And so they're bringing products to us constantly that are adding value to our customer relationships. And because of our legacy relationship with them and having the appropriate long-term business ties, there's a level of trust that allows us to move faster potentially than it does with an emerging company. So, I see that potentially being an issue for some. It's not been an issue for us, who have always had those tight relationships with a, absolute focus on the client the entire time. And my experience has been, as long as the agency is doing the right thing for the client, typically you don't have the direct media providers going direct to begin with.
I guess there's a flip side to it in that they're no longer seeing you as an exclusive channel, but you're no longer focused entirely on, representing their inventory.
Yeah, it's a mutual exchange of value for sure.
Okay. Other Chris, you're owned by YPG, or Yellow
Media
Company
Canada,
in Canada. So how do the ownership economics of inventory affect how you serve clients?
Well, I think for us in the marketplace, talking about Amex and programmatic buying, is probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I think Yellow Media in the Canadian marketplace realized that they have first-party data and that they can leverage that data for advertisers. And so Mediative, in the construct of Yellow Media, is an innovative, I would say, entrepreneurial type company. We're trying to innovate inside a large organization, but we're a separate entity. And what it allows us to do is, I think, take the view of what are the assets that Yellow Pages Canada has, Yellow Media, and how can we use that in kind of the modern digital space. And first-party data is probably one of the biggest things, but I think what it does is it takes the DNA of Yellow Media as being a local-based company, and the expertise of digital companies and bring those together. And that's what Mediative is. It's digital expertise taking a local DNA and pulling those two things together.
So that makes a lot of sense. And as you know, you're not the only one, right? I mean, this is an incredibly dense space, dare I say, becoming commoditized. Charlie and I have done multiple super forums on this topic across the country, not just at this event. So I guess I'll open this up to both of you guys and say, how are you different at the end of the day? I mean, if you're given a platform and you're given a pitch to say why you and not, the guys that just preceded you on the stage, or the guys that were with me on stage yesterday, or all the newspaper guys that are doing this, how is your approach different and differentiated? Because Victor doesn't care. He's going to come in with his own solution, right, and his own idea about how to win that business.
Yes.
We'll work with everyone.
Okay. I shouldn't put words in your mouth.
Victor.
Right.
I think from our standpoint is the DNA of the organization that is really the services side of Mediative is built on understanding human behavior. Since 2005, we've had a research lab where we look at how people engage online from a neuroscience perspective. So the one thing in the digital space that I think is very important for everyone to understand that doesn't change is human behavior. Technology changes, but technology doesn't change behavior. It just enables what people naturally wanted to do. So online, the reason Google is successful early on is because they provided the most relevant results highest up on the page, so you could find content as fast as possible. And so if we kind of root our understanding of how to apply digital for their organization with an understanding of who their audience is and how their audience behaves, that in essence is a differentiating mark, where a lot of organizations are using technology and scale and products. It's all based on understanding what products and solutions and almost be agnostic to them. Allow us to understand the audience and the buying behaviors and then align the best solutions to that. And at the end of the day, that is, I think, what differentiates someone as a business analyst and consultant in the digital world versus just someone who provides a product and a service.
Chris, how do you guys think about it?
I mean, first of all, I would concur with Chris's statements. I think that he's right on, especially from a corporate perspective. I think to take this back down to the grassroots and the discussion where this started, the biggest differentiator for me is being able to simplify that marketplace for the people who are buying the media. I mean, this is an incredibly difficult space to understand for those of us who work in it every single day. So for a small business owner, a franchisee, an agent who has to think about selling and running HR and all the other things that they have to do on a daily basis, to consider them capable of keeping up with those same trends and making the appropriate decisions, it's just not something that they can do on their own. And in general, without having an agency, typically what we end up with is the 39 salespeople calling on them every single month for a singular media type that it's tactical at best. So I think it's that. First of all, it's the strategy, it's the consultation, and ultimately it's the demonstration of results.
All right. I think that bumps us up against the end of this session. So.
And Victor will work with everybody, right?
Yeah, Victor will work. The key takeaway is Victor will work with everybody. So anyway, please join me in thanking the panel, and we're going to move right into a break, which is sponsored by Sightly. So we will see you all back here in half an hour.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.